Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Star Trek Prodigy Season 1, Episodes 17 through 20. In this video, I will be covering the last 4 episodes of Season 1 of Star Trek Prodigy, Episode 17, Ghost in the Machine, Episode 18, Mindwalk, Episode 19 and 20, Supernova, Parts 1 and 2. So if you have not seen all of these episodes, or up to the very end of the last episode, the finale of Season 1, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. For those who watch my channel or are somewhat familiar with my channel may have noticed that I have not been doing Prodigy reviews the past couple of weeks, and I made a post about it. I'm sure many of you saw that I'm actually taking a trip to New Zealand, and I was like too busy traveling and having fun, so I decided to put off my Prodigy reviews until I returned home to the United States. However, as it turns out, my trip got delayed to, thank you very much, COVID. So, I'm just sitting here in isolation, and I thought, well, I might as well do the Prodigy review while I'm still over here, since I'm probably going to be over here for like another week or so. So, yes, I decided to just review all the last 4 episodes that I missed reviews for all at once. And it's an interesting batch because I think that these 4 episodes were all really good. I think it was a really powerful, really great end to the season, and it really, for me, it really justifies the season as a whole. It makes me think better as the season as a whole, because I think it's not just that these 4 episodes were good, it's that it retroactively justified a lot of the character stories, the character growths. It gave them satisfying endings. It made them feel like it was a well character growth and through characters for many, if not all, of the main characters throughout the entire season. And those familiar with my channel will know I did have a few issues with a few decisions they made earlier in the season, and particularly them relying too heavily on this sitcom trope of misunderstanding that could have been easily cleared up had someone just said one thing. But I think, and I did say that I almost gave up on the show entirely, and that the show would have to work very hard to win me back. But I do think that the show has successfully done that, because for one thing, it hadn't made that blunder again, or similar blunders, and instead came with a really powerful, really enthralling ending that really had me invested in the show and the characters. And I gotta be honest, that finale had me shed a few tears. So to me, it totally did succeed in winning me back, and now I can overlook that blunder and a few other blunders they had this season a bit more. Even, I'm not gonna forget them entirely, but I can overlook them more and not let it ruin the whole show for me, and still think that this is actually overall a really good season. But I will save that for my season-long review, which I'll be doing next week. Anyway, so let me start with episode 17, Ghost in the Machine. Now, this is a typical holodeck, trapped in the holodeck episode, where the safeties go off. And it's kind of like, and this has happened throughout the first season of Prodigy, where they have to do a Star Trek trope, but, for the kiddies, for the kids that are seeing the show for the first time. And this is another thing that I wanted to mention because while I'm staying here in New Zealand, I'm staying with some friends, and the friends have 2 kids, 2 girls, a 5-year-old girl and a 6-year-old girl, and they've been watching cartoons all the time, and I showed them a couple episodes of Prodigy, and they really liked it, and it's actually given me a new perspective because I get to see Prodigy through kids' perspective, through their eyes, which is the intended audience. And I've never denied it's the intended audience. I'm always saying that I'm giving this reviews, my opinions, as an adult, where this is aimed more as a family show or a kids show. But it really made me appreciate the show a lot more. But what really made me appreciate the show a lot more actually was the fact that all these other shows that they're watching are not good. Like Prodigy is actually, in terms of, not that it's Star Trek, but in terms of story structure, character growth, visuals, is like much better than most of the other cartoons that out there that they normally watch. So that made me also have a larger, bigger appreciation for Prodigy, and that's just a better kids show. Now, there were some examples, as I said, with the comic misunderstanding, where it was more, came off as just a kids show and not something that the whole family can enjoy. But as I said, I think these last 4 episodes sort of saved it for that. But this episode in particular, as I said, so that's why I'm a bit more forgiven with the holodeck trope than I would be had it been any other modern Star Trek show, because we've seen these to death and dozens of times already, but the kiddies haven't seen it yet. So this new perspective has allowed me to be a bit more forgiving on stuff like that. And it was a fun episode, I dare say. Seeing like Murph singing in the holodeck was funny. Although I will say, because I didn't watch any reviews on this one, but I will wonder if people is like, oh, this is the official canon that Murph can actually talk. However, they did have a line in here that said that perhaps Murph was actually just lip syncing, which is actually the canon I'm going with. That's my head canon. And so Murph actually cannot like talk like other than squeaking noises and stuff. And then I thought it was a good format. I think they actually justified having a Trapped in the Holodeck episode by tying it into the larger story of the show, rather than it just being, oh, the holodeck malfunctioned for no reason, and the safety just went off for no reason, which is what usually happens in these Trapped in the Holodeck episode shows. Whereas this one actually had it was the weapon that hijacked hologram Janeway's program and had her do it, and that tracks. Like, I think that actually is a good justification for it. And it's also made for an interesting, because the whole thing was structured as a mystery story, and it made for an interesting mystery story where they're trying to find this key, and finally Zero uncovers the mystery, saying that the key is irrelevant and it's just a way to keep them trapped in the holodeck. So it did have vibes of Ship in the Bottle a little bit in this episode. Not as good as Ship in the Bottle, but I would say definitely better than the majority of these Trapped in the Holodeck episodes. And the ending where they revealed that ensign, the Trill ensign on Admiral Janeway's ship, was actually one of the diviner species. God, I already forgot what she was called. It was another grandiose name. They're giving themselves all these grandiose names, but I'm gonna have to look it up now. But yeah, that was a cool reveal. That was a shocking reveal. I thought really worked for me. So yeah, I really liked this episode. So my rating for Ghost in the Machine out of 10 is an 8. Extremely good. So the next episode was Mindwalk. And now, again, we're getting into another trope, which, to be fair, this is not so much of a Star Trek particular trope, but it's just a trope in general with TV shows and whatnot, and that's the body swap trope. And this is actually something that Strange New Worlds did recently, and it worked in that show, and I think it works in this show too. And because it's a trope I usually don't like, but actually, again, they tied it into the larger story, and it made sense on why this would happen, because they need to communicate with Admiral Janeway, who's kind of, trying to trap their ship and almost has them trapped, and want to, set up communications, and they know that that's going to lead to the other destruction of Starfleet, so they're desperate to stop them, and so they want to be able to communicate with Janeway to let her know what's going on, but they have to find some way to do that outside of using the comms. So, and then it made sense that, Zero being a Medusan has some telepathic abilities, and that Dal being a augment with all these different, different genetic makeup would have telepathic abilities, and so that they use those to communicate with Janeway. And it does make sense that they don't know that much about Dal and his genetic makeup, and so that makes sense that they would kind of mess up and it would react differently than they would think, and it would have unexpected results, which ends up having the body swap plot. So that all tracks for me, that works. And for most of all, the reason why I really like this episode is because mostly I found it really exciting, because it was really intense. The stakes were high. I was invested in all the character stories that were going on, and it was great seeing Janeway actually learn the truth about these criminals that she's been tracking, and that they've actually been trying to save Starfleet the whole time. And it was really gratifying to see her reaction, how she instantly is accepting of them, which again, it doesn't make me forgive the blunder earlier when they didn't talk to Janeway when they really should have. I think they should have just handled that episode differently, but it doesn't blemish this episode is what I'm saying. That episode's still bad, but this one is not blemished by it. They should have just handled it differently in the past. But anyway, so yeah, and it was super intense and also kind of funny too, the way Dal was acting in Janeway's body. I think both voice actors did a good job sort of emulating their counterpart, and it's particularly good seeing Janeway acting all goofy, but I think the goofiness is really in character with Dal. That's exactly how Dal would behave, and he wouldn't really know what was going on and how he was supposed to react. And so it creates an interesting conundrum at the end of the episode where they switch back, and now Janeway has all the information that Starfleet needs to know to save themselves, but she's now trapped in the brig because she was acting so crazy when Dal was in her body. That was good. It all worked for me. So my rating for Mindwalk out of 10 is a 9. Excellent. Alright, so next we'll get into the 2-part finale, which I'm going to review at once, because I actually feel like, and this is my biggest critique of the 2-parter, is that it should have aired at once. I think the second part didn't really feel as self-contained as a lot of 2-parters do. It felt like it was more of it resolved the story in the first 5 minutes and the rest was kind of wrap up, set up for the next season, which is fine. I got no issue with that, but I feel like it would have worked better as an hour-long episode rather than 2 halves split in half. So I think it should have aired in the same week. That's my only complaint about it, really, but that's also why I'm going to talk about it at once. Supernova's parts 1 and 2. This episode was amazing. I think this was the perfect ending for the season. I think, as I said, this episode in particular really justified the entire season-long arc. It was a great payoff for it. Now, yeah, so they had a thing where the whatever her forgot her grandiose name, but that other one of the diviner species comes on board with the diviner, and then alright, I will say the diviner's turn to save his daughter was, I won't say I didn't buy it at all. I partially bought it. It makes sense that he would want to save his daughter. Yes, totally, I do buy that. But the fact that he would completely go attack the other person and go against his whole species objective, I don't feel like that. And also what he did earlier in the season of letting Janeway go because she had saved him earlier, I don't think these changes in this character were 100% earned. I'm a bit iffy on it, I will say. It's not like I think it's completely bollocks or completely unviable, but it's partially unviable, I will say. So that was another tiny little nitpick I had, but the whole sequence of them trying to fight it off, and the team working together to fight off the Oh God, I can't even remember what that big robotic thing is called. Yeah, I should look these things up. But anyway, that and how they each use their own, special abilities. They have Murph tried to do it, and then Zero would use Zero's abilities, and Doll had his special abilities, but they all got defeated at the end. But then they worked together to free themselves. Like that all worked, and of course Gwen had that final confrontation, and then it looked like they were gonna have, after. What's her face killed the diviner, it looked like they were going to have that final confrontation with her, but then she just peaced out and just took off, because at this stage she had successfully managed to operate the weapon to get Starfleet to contact. And in fact, I think she opened a hail to Starfleet, and of course this triggered the weapon. And it is, yeah, and it was super suspense the way Admiral Janeway was like trying to get there in time to stop it. And I think I do need to talk about the scene where she was in the brig and she was talking to the security officer who was holding in the brig, and she was like, I know my word doesn't mean much to you. And she's like, yes, actually it does, Admiral Janeway, because you had saved my life. They reference the 5th season episode of Voyager Counterpoint, which is one of my favorite episodes of Voyager, where they were saving a group of telepathic refugees, and she said that she was one of the refugees. I'm willing to go with why a refugee from the Delta Quadrant would be in Starfleet. Now, as I said, it's a bit of they have played a bit fast and loose. I mean, I'm sure people could come up with all these headcanon excuses on how this happens. I've actually heard a couple, but it boils down to you're all stretching it. Any excuse you come up with is stretching it. Sure, it kind of makes sense, but you're stretching it. But anyway, I'm willing to go with it. Like, I'm not going to get hung up on it. I'm like, it's fine. Like, and I did actually appreciate the reference to that episode Counterpoint, as I said, it's one of my favorite episodes. And I also made a really great moment that what Janeway had, how she proven her character and herself in the past, had actually come back to help her. It's her, what she's done to gain the goodwill is actually, helps her in this moment. And I think, to me, that was the most powerful thing about this scene. And also, like, a lot of people tend to be down on Janeway from Voyager and saying that she made a lot of mistakes. A lot of the bad things she did, I kind of chalk up to bad writers. She didn't really know how to write for her, because there's one thing that's true about Janeway throughout the Voyager's entire run, is that the writers are very inconsistent with her. So we have a few acting out of character and do a few like bad decisions and horrible things, but that's when I think bad writers who didn't really understand her got their hands on her, and that most of the time she was actually a really good captain, and this is an example of that, coming back and helping her in this situation. And I certainly love the way that Janeway was portrayed in this show, by the way, which I think they're almost doing a better job of making her a better character than Voyager did. But yeah, anyway, that was a great moment, and then Janeway comes to the bridge, but of course she shows up just 1 second too late, which is not what I was expecting. It totally blew my mind that they actually went the way of having all these Starfleet ships suddenly attack each other and try to destroy each other. And then we get this great moment where they contact the non-Starfleet ships and they come and save it. Now, this one did seem a bit, kidsy, a bit cheesy, like it wouldn't really happen in a live-action Star Trek thing, but it was still a great moment. Like, I still liked it. It's still like, it's like a triumphant moment that worked. So I'm willing to go with it there. And then this is where the first part ended, and I was kind of thinking in the weekend between, how are they going to get out of this situation? Are they going to... My first thought was they're going to do time travel, because they've already introduced time travel into the show. So I thought they were going to find a way to travel back in time, and that next season would get like a sort of redo of them being back in the time trying to stop this disaster from happening. But it's probably better that they didn't do that. Instead, they came up with a way so that... I mean, how many people died in the meantime, though, when all these ships were attacking each other? You saw some ships ships destroyed. And you did see escape pods, but maybe not everyone got out, so maybe some people died. But whatever, it's a cartoon, they're not going to give those details. But they did manage, so they didn't undo it, but they did manage to stop it by destroying the protostar, and they found a way to do it that wouldn't wipe out all of Starfleet, because apparently if it just self-destructed, it would have a supernova that would wipe out most of Starfleet, so they had to come up with some inventive way to do it, and involve someone staying behind, which is, a trope used a lot, but again, I'm willing to go with it. And I like how Dole, of course, volunteered himself because he knows that he can't get into Starfleet because he's an augment. But then Admiral Janeway sticks up and says, "Oh, don't worry, I'll do it. But don't worry, I'll just make a copy of myself." And then when she goes to make a copy of herself, she finds that it won't work. And I knew instantly that she was gonna lie and pretend like it worked. And it makes sense, and it's actually actually one of the moments that kind of made me cry a bit. That it's just a hologram, but still, this is a hologram of Janeway that we've been with all season, and that she was willing to sacrifice herself in order to save all of the Starfleet, and so, but more specifically, so that Dal or any of the others wouldn't have to sacrifice themselves. It was so heartwarming, particularly when they saw the message from her explaining it to them and saying how much they've grown, and saying how much they can accomplish and how great they've been. It's just, to me, it was one of the most satisfying endings to a season a show could have. Like, it really justified the whole season. That combined with Admiral Janeway going to trial for them and defending them. And I love the moment when they were in a debriefing and this Vulcan was saying, "Oh, are you referring to the criminals that stole the protostar?" She's like, "No, actually, I'm referring to the heroes that saved Starfleet." And I love that. That was such a cheer moment. And I love how she went to the trial and stood up for them and saying, these people deserve to be in Starfleet way more than anyone else. They've experienced this. They saved all of the Federation with their actions, and I agree with her. Like, who cares about them stealing a ship or whatever, impersonating officers, when they saved the entire freaking Federation? I think that trumps everything. And of course, it reminded me very much of Star Trek For the Voyage Home, particularly even when they came back home and they were sitting by the Golden Gate Bridge waiting to be rescued. Is very Voyage Home-esque, and also how Voyage Home, Kirk was put on trial for his actions, but then he was given a sentence that made sense for the show or the plot, was that he would be a captain again, so he could be a captain in more movies, where here it's like, well, they can't go to Starfleet Academy because then the show would be totally different, so they had to assign them on a ship with Janeway so we can still have a show. So it's very similar to the Voyage Home in that regard. But it made a lot of sense, and as setting up for a really interesting season, because they teased that they now know where Chakotay is, which is kind of a mystery that was kind of in the background, that where Chakotay is, because we knew they revealed earlier, a few episodes earlier, that he was in the future and being held prisoner there, and so it was, so that was, so where exactly, how are they going to get him, what's going on with him, but they get his distress call, and they find, and so Janeway's going to launch a mission to go into the future to save them, and then, but Gwen is not going to go with them. She's going to go off to her home planet to try to save them, in a way that's better than, destroying Starfleet, which I always thought they were not taking any self-responsibility and should manage their own shit anyway, so that makes sense to me. But I don't know if that means that Gwen's going to be written off the show. I haven't read anything yet. I'm sure maybe some people made statements about it. I doubt it. I think they would do a storyline with her, and somehow she would meet up with the crew again. That's my guess, but we'll see. But we do know that the rest of them is going to go with Janeway to look for Chakotay, which is going to be a really interesting season 2. So I think this was a really perfect ending. for the season as a whole, and absolutely love this two-parter. So my rating for Supernova out of 10 is a 10, the best. Yeah, so that is it for my review of the last 4 episodes of Prodigy. Now, as I mentioned, I will be back next week to do a full-length season 1, like the entire season 1 review of Prodigy, looking at the season as a whole, which would probably be less favorable than just looking at these 4 episodes, but these 4 episodes did end the season so great. So yeah, so that's coming up on my channel, and then also next week I'll be doing my top 10 favorite show, or top 10, best shows, favorite shows of 2022, and then I'm also going to be doing another video talking about all the movies I saw in 2022. So those will be next week, and the week after I will return more to my Star Trek The Original Series episode review. So be sure to check out my channel for all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.